All right, today we are going to learn we're continuing in the book Torah Or. And we're learning about the meeting between Yosef and Yehuda. Let me explain. We learned last week that Yosef became the king of Egypt, the virtual king, the de facto king of Egypt. Paro said that you're going to be the leader of Egypt. You're going to have control over everything. Just you won't be called king. You won't be called king. And so he was the virtual king of the whole Egypt, and eventually he became the king of the whole world because there was a famine in the whole world. And how did Yosef become king? Because he had been a prisoner, falsely accused of rape, and he was a prisoner in a not only confused but accused but convicted, and he was in Egyptian jail. But he interpreted a couple of dreams when he was there. And it happened to be that one of the people he interpreted dreams was one of the ministers of Paro. And Paro, 2 years later, also had a dream. And Yosef was called out of the prison in order to interpret Paro's dream as well, right? One of the minister, that particular minister, happened to be there when Paro had this dream. And Paro called for someone to interpret. Nobody could interpret it. Right? They had all sorts of interpretations, but Paro said, "Nah, that's not that. I don't like that." And so he said, "Let's try it." So he calls out Yosef, and Yosef interprets it properly. And the dream is that there's going to be a huge famine in 7 years, and that 8 years, that they should store up all the food for 7 years, and then this famine is going to start. And Pharaoh, it rang by him. He liked it. And he said, "Yosef, you're the greatest. You're going to be the king." Okay, this whole amazing story would be enough, but that's not. That's just a prelude. That's just a preparation for the real story. Saving the whole world is just, that's just how do you say, a preparation, first act of this play. And the second act, if you want to say, is that there's no food in the whole world. And so everyone has to go into Egypt to get food. And among everyone, how many people must have been in the world back then? I don't know, 100 million people, however many people there were in the world, they all went to Egypt to get food because there was no food. And among those millions and tens of millions, or who knows how many hundreds of millions of people that were in the world back then, as 13 of them were Yosef, his brothers, and his father, I guess, and their wives and their children as well. So there was more than 13. It says that when they went down into Egypt, there was 70. So let's say there were 70 people, right? So out of them, there was 70 people. And the brothers of Yosef came down, like everybody else, to buy food in Egypt. And that was the whole thing. That was the whole entire point of all of this, what we're talking about Yosef being sold down into Egypt by his brothers. And so then he became a prisoner, and he heard the dreams, and he interpreted the dreams. And then he got out and he became a king. That was all just a preparation for this. And this is also a preparation we're going to see. So the brothers come down, and Yosef drives them crazy. And what does Yosef do? Yosef pretends not to know them. And then it takes a little bit longer, but he pretends not to know them. And he sends them back home. He sends them back home. And he puts his special cup, his divining cup, whatever, his magic cup, he puts it in the bag of the youngest of the brothers, who happens to be the only brother, the direct brother, same mother as Yosef, Benjamin. And he sends his men after and says, "Somebody stole our master's cup." And they say, "Oh, can't be." And they said, well, let's look and see. So they bring everybody back to Yosef and they check, and sure enough, there's the cup in Benjamin's bag. And Yosef says, no problem. He's the only thief. I'll keep him here forever, and you can all go. So this already puts on the red light. Everybody's already heartbroken. And they say, wow, this is awful. But our father is going crazy. Why? Because Benjamin is his favorite son. Really, Yosef was his favorite son. But Yosef, they think he's dead or something. They don't know where he is. They sold him into captivity. So if you remember way back then that Yaakov, their father, he got married. He worked, and he went down to Lavan's house, and he got married to who he thought was his chosen, soulmate, and Rachel. And he was tricked, and it wasn't Rachel. They tricked him in the nighttime. They changed it to Leah. So he really wanted to get married to Rachel and give birth to Yosef and Benjamin. Those his main children were supposed to be the ones that came from Rachel. And they still remain that way. He did marry Rachel, but they tricked him, so he had to marry her number two. And so here we have Yosef is now the king, right? And the brothers don't know it. And Yosef is enjoying every second of it because he's driving them crazy, which is like 1,000th of how he drove them, how they drove him crazy. They threw him in a pit full of scorpions. And he wasn't doing it for revenge. He was doing it in order to impress upon them. Eventually, it's going to come out good, right? Impress upon them how wrong they were, and also to bring a certain degree of forgiveness, that they would actually repent from what their deeds, and which they did. They said, well, this is all happening to us because we sold our brother. Anyway, so here we go. Now, this is how we're opening up. This is how this week's Torah portion opens up. Yosef has taken Benjamin into imprisonment, imprison him. And he tells the rest of the brothers, you can go. And Yehuda steps forward. He's like sort of the leader of all the brothers. He was the one who had the idea to throw Yosef into the pit and to sell him into captivity. So Yehuda now, Vayigash Elav Yehuda. Yehuda steps forward bravely humbly and also bravely to Yosef. And he says to Yosef, please, be Adoni, please, my master. Now the word be also means in me, my master. So here we go. This is it. Vayomer, yeah. Vayigash Alav Yehuda. Yehuda came close to him. Came close to who? To Yosef. Yehuda was like a nothing, right? He was just one of the millions of people that are coming up to Yosef. And Yosef, he's the king of the whole world. He's got all this power, all these powerful men standing around, soldiers and everybody. And Yehuda says he's ready for three things. He's in any case, he's praying, pleading with Yosef, and he's also ready for war. He's also ready for war. He's going to fight if he has to. He'll go down fighting. He's not going to let him take his brother, because his soul, it says, Nafsho Kashira Nafsho. It says, my father's soul is attached to Benjamin. Take any one of us, but don't take him. It'll break our father's heart. Vayigash Alav Yehuda. Yehuda came close to, he approached Yosef. Vayomer bi Adoni. Okay, good. That's what's happening here. Okay, now this is much deeper than it appears to be. First of all, it's written in the Torah. Who wrote the Torah? God himself. God himself wrote the Torah. That's what we believe. And of course, we know, all the reasons for not saying so. That Torah is just a book, and come on, God doesn't write books. God doesn't go. Doesn't what to do. Sits around and writes a book. Especially it's a sort of diary. God is writing a diary. What is he? The fact of the matter is, it does not make any sense, but it is definitely true. And if you think about it, it makes a little bit of sense, because God creates the world. And God cares about us, and He wants us to know what to do. He created us so that we would serve Him. We would, how do you say, jump up to a higher dimension of truth, and instead of living in this world for our own mundane or spiritual purposes, we'll do it for godly purposes. And that's why He gave the Torah in the world. In any case, that's what we believe. That's the assumption that we're basing all these classes on, right? That God gave the Torah, is giving the Torah every moment. The Torah is the source of all time, the source of all meaning, the source of all truth, and the source of all creation. That's the blueprint of creation. God is creating the world through the Torah every moment. It's the source of all the spiritual and the source of all the spirits, this and secrets, and it's also the source of me and you right now. The Torah. It's all coming through the Torah. Okay, so that's what all these classes, this is the assumption, the axiom that these classes are based on. So here we go. Now Yehuda comes close to Yosef. Yosef is sitting up on the throne, and Yehuda comes up to Yosef. Okay, now that's first introduction. Second introduction, the Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda. The whole purpose of Judaism is the Mashiach. Mashiach is going to be a person that he is going to bring all of the Jews, and in fact, all of the world, to worship only the Creator. Only the Creator. All these other religions are mistakes. Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and Hinduism, they all have their good aspects to them, especially that they point people that there's such a thing as Mashiach and that the Torah is true, but also they provide certain, values to people and certain a framework of good and bad. So people, so they have their good things. All the good things that they have are what they took from the Torah. All these different religions. But in any case, Mashiach is going to be a person that's going to show the world that all the religions in the world are simply mistakes, and that people should worship only the Creator, and that's what the 7 Noahide commandments are for. And the Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda. Mashiach is going to come from Yehuda. Okay, there's also Yosef. Yosef, it says there's going to be also a Mashiach ben Yosef also, but that's shrouded in all sorts of mysteries, and that's not the main Mashiach. We pray every day as Tzemach David Abdacham. We're praying for the Mashiach ben David. The Mashiach ben David, the Rambam says, Maimonides, David was the first Messiah, and Mashiach will be the second, will be Mashiach ben David. He'll be the second Messiah. He'll do it. Bring all the Jews back to Israel, build the Holy Temple first, and then bring all the Jews back to Israel. Okay, so this meeting together, but this meeting together, this is Yehuda, which is this is the forerunner of Mashiach. Remember, we learned in the Haftorah of last week, Zerubbabel. Anyway, Yehuda, he's Mashiach, and Yosef is sort of like the preparation for Mashiach. Now, this also comes down to the tabernacle that the Jews used in the desert and for a long time when they came into Israel, and the Holy Temple. The Holy Temple is like Yehuda. Your Holy Temple is a forerunner of Mashiach. And the tabernacle that the Jews built in the desert, the tabernacle, that is, that's something like Yosef, the tabernacle. Now, for your knowledge, just so you knowledge, let's see, maybe we can even find this over here. I don't know if we can. I don't think it comes up anyway, but should we look for it? 1 second. You know what? Let me just look for this 1 minute and see if we can find this. Here we go. Tabernacle. Hold on a second. All right, let's try this. Here we go. So let's try this. Mishkan. 1 minute. Let's. Here we go. Let's. Okay. I don't know if this is it. This is what we want. All right, here. Let's do this. Mishkan Shiloh. Let's see if this is how it looks. Let's see if we can get this. Nah, I don't think so. No. All right. I'm sorry. Okay, let's just go back. Anyway, how did the Mishkan look in the desert? Excuse me 1 second. I should have prepared this yesterday, but I didn't, but that's all right here. Never too late, I think. Oh, here we go. Here we go. Look at it. Here we got it. Here we go. The Tabernacle. I should have written Tabernacle. All right. Let's see if we get some pictures over here. All right, here we go. Here we have some terrible pictures of the Mishkan. So let's go like this. Here we go. Good. And we'll go like this. Give me 1 second, please. Give me a second. The last time I did this, it did not come up. Turn back to the meeting. Here, let's start again. Oh, good. Yes. Okay, here, see, this should be coming up on everything. This was what was called the Mishkan. The Mishkan was in the desert. Why am I telling you this? Because this is going to be corresponding to Yosef. The Mishkan was made like this. We have a picture over here. We have a picture. The ground was ground. It wasn't any special ground. Then there were boards. Where are the boards over here? Do we have any pictures of the boards? Let's see. Here, see, there were boards. This sides here, the sides over here, they were boards. I hope this is coming up. The sides were made of boards. Terrible, inaccurate pictures they have over here. They just looked in the Chumash and they would have seen. Okay, this was made of boards, and over the top of it was a roof. The roof was made of skins of animals. Tchashim, and okay, that's what it looked like. Skins of animals there were. Good. So the ground was ground that was mineral. Then the walls were made of wood, that's vegetable, and the top was made of animal. So it went from below to above. Good. All right, let's go back now. Hine, behold, Kativ, it is written, Korod Beitenu Arazim. It is written, Korot, the walls of our house, referring to this tabernacle I just showed you, are Arazim. Now, this tabernacle accompanied the Jews for the 40 years they were leaving, they were wandering in the desert, the 40 years, and also for the next 440 years that they were in the land of Israel, until they built the first temple. Until they built the first temple, it was 440 years. 440 years that they built, that they had this tabernacle in various forms. In Shiloh, it was there for like 369 years, and then it was more permanent. But nevertheless, that's the basis. Okay, Hine, Yesh Lomer, we can say, Ha'efresh bein Mishkan leBeit Olamim, the difference between the tabernacle and Beit Olamim and the temple and the holy temple, Sham Mishkan Oyami Arazin, that the Mishkan, that the tabernacle had what's called cedar wood or whatever, shittim wood. Like it says, Atzei shittim omnim. It was shittim wood. Sometimes they translated a kakio wood or something. Anyway, usually it's translated as cedar. Mikse, and the roof, Haya, was mirios. The roof was from skins, animal skins, izim, boros elim, boros tchashim. Va'beit hamikdash, and the base of Mikdash, the whole thing was made of stones and dirt, cement. Davka. Also, it was forbidden to put any wood into it. Be'etz bullet va'achsadros shel eitz, or any sort of like Excuse me. Excuse me. Or any sort of like balconies or anything made of wood. It was forbidden. Like the Rambam writes in the laws of the Beis Bechira, that's what the Holy Temple is called. Rak Shoyo Kolonsos, there were certain like there were certain beams on the top made of eras that were made of cedar wood in the ceiling. Okay, but they weren't necessary for the any case, Torah Lam, we have to understand the main difference is the holy temple, the final temple, was made totally of rocks and stones. And there was no animal in it. There was no furs or skins like the top of the tabernacle was. No wood, except for certain small beams, but weren't really necessary on the top. So, in other words, the tabernacle went according to the creation. There was ground, was the lowest. Then plant was the second. It was on the walls. That was above that. And then on the top were animals. So it went from below to above. Mineral, plant, animal. But Tzarech Laban, we have to understand this. Why was it in the Mishkan? Why was it that in the tabernacle that accompanied the Jews in the desert, Hayu Razim Ikar, the plant, the wood was the main thing of the binya building. The Afaroy Rak Bakarka, and the dirt was only on the ground of the Mishkan. It was only on the ground of the tabernacle. And in the holy temple, it was exactly the opposite. The main thing was the ground. Stones and ground were the main thing. Even the ceiling, the roof, was made of them. And there was just these certain small beams that were there of in the ceiling that were plant, that were of cedar wood. Show you tefillin, they were totally secondary to the main thing of the building. Okay, so essentially, what are we saying? The holy temple, first temple, second temple, and the third temple will be made totally of mineral rocks. And which is not the case. The tabernacle was elevated. The bottom was the most insignificant thing was rocks that was on the floor. And then the actual building was made from wood and animal skins. We're on the top. Opinion is like this. It's known. There is in every world Dalit Bechinas, 4 levels. Every level, even of the spiritual, there are 4 levels. Domim, Tzameach, Chai, Umedaber. Domim means mineral. Tzameach, Tzadik, is plant. Chai, animal. Medaber, human. Domim, in every world we're talking about, in all the world. Now, generally speaking, there are 4 worlds, which are 4 dimensions of reality. In fact, there's many, many levels of world, right? Just like in this physical world, in our physical world, right? So what is there? There's the physical, and then you can have emotional, then you can have intellectual, then you can have the spiritual in this physical world. And all those are broken up into all sorts of different levels. There's all sorts of different levels of physical and the spiritual. Vadomim, hulamata, the lowest in each world is what's called the physicality of that world. Domim, the mineral of each world, is below plant, and plant is below animal. And animal, of course, is below human. The highest of them is human. Well, at first glance, to more, it's a big wonder. If so, why is it that the earth, okay, where are we going? Look at the world. Just look at the world, how the world goes, right? How God created the world. There's 4 different levels of, if you want to call it consciousness. in this world, right? For there are minerals. God creates minerals. That's all ground. Then there's things which are called animals and bugs and fish and birds. All these, right? If you look at the story of creation in Judaism, so it says that that's how things were created. First of all, God created the mineral, and then after that, He created the animal, the fish, and the birds and things. And then last of all, I'm sorry, first of all, He created the mineral, then He created the plant, then He created all the animals, and then after that, He created humans. So there's like 4 different levels of consciousness, of if you want to call it mobility, that there are in the world. Minerals don't move at all. They're like dead. Plants, they're like sort of dead. They're attached to the ground. They can't really move around. And they react, but on a very, very basic primitive level. But they react. They react to sunlight, whatever. But they're stuck to the ground. Then we have animal. Animal are not stuck to the ground at all. And they also react in a much more sophisticated way than plants do. And human is even more. So it says, the highest of them all is medaber, human. At first glance, if the lowest of all of them is the ground, so if so, why is it that the ground is the one that brings out plants? And the plants will grow venolad and are born, and they are drawn out from the ground. Halo atzomeach is l'mayla miadomim. Plants are a higher life form than ground is. It should be like we said, like something dies. What happens when something dies? It turns into ground. That's the way things should be. First of all, it starts off with the most sophisticated, and then things deteriorate. Isn't that what the atrophy? Isn't there something atrophy? That there's no such thing as that was the big fault, they say, with Darwin's theory, that in nature you don't find that things become more developed one from the other, right? This whole idea that things adjust to their surrounding, and therefore they develop, they become more sophisticated, the survival of the fittest. But we don't see any examples of this in nature. I'm imagining that scientists could. I'm not a scientist, right? But generally speaking, things become less and less alive, right? Less and less alive. That's the way usually it is, right? If so, why do we see that the ground, which is the least alive, that it has the power to give growth? It should be that the human has the power to give growth. It should be that plants grow from humans. I don't know how exactly it'll be. But how is it that the lowest from the ground, that's where plants grow up from? And the answer is like this: low rayazu karayazu. That we're talking about two different principles are working over here. Just because the ground is the lowest doesn't mean that it hasn't got the power of growth. Sha'af al pi, that even though the domem, the mineral, lamata is below the lowest, and it's below even plants. Im calls it nevertheless, there is an advantage mitzad shorsha because of its source. True. The question is good as long as you don't look at the source. Somehow or other, the ground, that's how God made the world. The ground contains the power of growth. The ground, if you take a seed and you put it in the air or you put it in, it doesn't grow. Only the ground has the power to grow. Put a seed and put it in a human being, right? Implant a seed in a person's arm or something like that, or a person just holds a seed in his mouth or something, it doesn't grow. Put it in an animal, it doesn't grow, right? I guess if you put a seed, stick a seed inside of a tree, it won't grow, as far as I know, unless the tree is maybe attached to the ground. But you put it in the ground, it grows up. Why? Because the ground, even though the result is that it's the lowest, but really it's the source of it is the highest, and it has the power of growth. You do, it's known. There is an argument between the Tanaim, the authors of the Mishnah in the Talmud. One of them says, Shemayim Kadmon Oretz. One of them says, the heavens came before the earth. Like it says, Bereshis Bora Elokim as the Shemayim as Oretz. God created the spiritual first. God created, first of all, there was the spiritual worlds, all the heavens, and then afterwards he created the earth. That's what it says in the Bible. That's Oretz. V'chad Omer, but one of them says, no, Eretz Kadma. The first thing that God created was the earth. Kamosh Katuv, like it is written, Bayomo Sos, Eretz v'Shamayim. If you look a little bit further in the Bible, so it tells the story of creation, and then it says, and then it repeats the story of creation, and it says, this is the first time it tells it is that God created the heavens and the earth, and the other it says that God created the earth and the heavens. Earth came first. So they both of them have a support from the Bible. What's going on? And also, what's going on in the Bible? Why does the Bible give us these two conflicting messages? It says, Elu ve'elu dibre Elokim chayim. Both of these opinions are the words of the living God. That the heavens are first and the earth is first. How can that possibly? Something has to be first. It can't be both of them are first. It says, Shebel machshava, because in God's thought, the earth was the first thing. Kadma l'shamayim, the earth came before the heavens. In God's thought, the first thing was the final product, right? A person builds a house. What's he got in his mind? First, the finished house, right? Otherwise, it doesn't take wood and just start building and see what comes out. No, the first thing he has in his mind is the blueprints for the final house. So the first thing in his thought is the final product. So first thing in his thought was the earth. Okay, Shabora, but when God created it, how did he do? He started off with the heavens first. Right, first was the heavens. So you have in your mind the final product for the house, and then afterwards you go and you get maybe an architect or something. Maybe you work on with him. Maybe you touch it up a little bit, the final product. But then the architect starts to make the plans, and he calls the building crew and etc. The Indian is like this: Ki sov ma'aseh b'machshava techila. Excuse me. The last deeds of God, and there's the final product that was in God's thought first. The world, because it was the end. It's thought. The source was in thought. It's the beginning of thought. But the heavens, that's what God started with. Hey, Marcharon, they're the first thing in God's thought. In other words, in God's essence, God created the world, right? So when God creates the world, why? So Judaism says that the main thing that God wanted was the physical world. And all these spiritual worlds going to heaven and all that's just, how do you say, stages toward the main goal. The main goal is the physical earth. That's the goal. And all these spiritual levels, those are just steps to get there. Conversely, also, if a person wants to have a little bit of a connection to the essence of God, so there's also steps, and that's the spiritual worlds. That's these Kabbalah books and things like that. But all these are just steps to get to the what do you call the essence of God, from below to above to get to the essence of God. And where is the essence of God really found? In this physical world. This is what God wants. So it says the last thing to be created, that was the first thing in God's mind. Kizel klal. This is the general principle that we're working on here. Shesof maseh ola techila b'machshava. That the final deed is what is rooted in God's thought. Now we have to remember that God did not just create the world 5,700 years ago. God started creating the world 5,700 years ago. That's when he began creating the world. But the fact is God is creating the world brand new every instant. So what you see, the world here in front of you, the sky with the birds and the trees and etc. If you live in this place where if you can see the sky and the birds and the trees, so if you don't live in such a place, then take my word for it. There is such a thing as sky and birds and trees, and all these things exist. They are they rose in God's thought first, right now. Somehow or other, all these birds in the sky, that's higher than going to heaven. Of course, that doesn't make any sense whatsoever, but God doesn't make any sense. It also doesn't make any sense that he creates the world and that he created the world. Doesn't make any sense. But you can't figure that out scientifically or mathematically or in any way that God created the world. It just says it in the Torah, and we have a certain feeling that maybe it's true, but there's no way you can prove it. There's no instrument that can detect God, right? Or some sort of a formula that you can put God in a formula. But nevertheless, that we say, that's our belief. That's what we believe, that God is creating the world all the time, and that the creation of the physical world comes from the essence. Sof Ma'aseh b'machshava techila, that the final deed in this world rose up in God's mind. So we can see how important it is to God, everything we do and say and think. Therefore, Hatzomeach, therefore, the plant is higher than mineral. The cane, hachai, and also the animal is higher from the plant. Why? Because that's how God created. This is according to the order of God's creation. When he started creating it, he created it, first of all, from below to above. Seder ishtalshlut, the domen sameach hayam medaber. So if he created it, so the first thing that God created was the domen sameach hayam medaber. But olamot shebechinas domem, that the level of earth and dirt, this is the last. This is the last. Sof ma'aseh. But someach v'chai, and the plant and the animal, lamaila mimenu, is above it. But madrega, in level, right? First of all, God created the least important thing. He created the ground, and then just like in a house, right? What do? You create the foundation. You don't care about the foundation. The foundation is the most important thing as far as holding the house up, but you don't live in the foundation. That's just like a preparation. The main thing you want is your living room. You want a nice living room where you can invite people there, and it's nice and quiet and it's secure. That's the main thing. That's the whole idea, that the heavens come before the earth. The main thing is the heavens. But in their source and thought, Hakaduma, Hari Eretz Kodma, the earth really came first. So in this world, the least important thing is the earth. The most important thing is the people. But says the Rebbe that somehow or other, that no, it's not so. That really the earth is the main thing, and we're going to see. Lochin, therefore, davka ba, in the physical earth. That's why in the physical earth it has the power and the ability to grow plants. Mitzad shorsha, because it has this tremendously high source. Lochin, therefore, therefore, the plants, and animals and humans, all of them receive from the ground. Okay, here in Mishkan, in the tabernacle, loya nimsa adayim tachlis hashlema. So what did we learn in the first paragraph? We learned in the first paragraph that Yehuda approached Yosef. Yehuda, we're going to see, he represents the ground. He represents the temple that was made from ground. It was made from earth, mineral. And Yosef, he represents the tabernacle. The tabernacle was like in the order of creation, how things were actually created. The least important is the ground. Above that is the more developed is a plant. Above that is animal. Okay, why? We'll see. Hine b'Mishkan, in the tabernacle, it has not yet reached Tachlit Shlemut, the ultimate completion. Shayarak Dirat Arai, the tabernacle that was in the desert was only a temporary dwelling for God. Like it says, I am going in a tent and in the tabernacle. Lokak, therefore, Nasa Kafi Ofen Seder Ishtalshlus, therefore was made according to the order of creation. Echshen Nivru Kasidra, and how it was created, that the heavens are first, the heavens are before the earth. Right? That the top of the Mishkan was skins. That's like the heavens. The highest level was on the highest. And the lowest level, the dirt within the lowest. And therefore, Kotli Mishkan, therefore the walls of the Mishkan, they were from Krushim, they were from boards. They were plant. Raka Karka, only the ground was from dirt. This is how it is in the order of creation. That the plant is above mineral. And therefore, Nasa Krushim Marazim, She'eres Gadol, Kagova, that the cedar trees, they grow up very, very high. This is like the highest level of plant. Much, much higher than the ground. The ground doesn't grow at all. Exactly the opposite, right? The ground, everything is dead, is dead. Mishkan, and the covering of the Mishkan that was from skins. It was from skins of animals. This is the level of animal, which was higher than plant as well. Therefore, therefore the the coverings that were on the tabernacle, this is like the level of makifim. This is what's called the surrounding level of godliness, like the heavens. Shu Perusim al Kotli al Mishkan, they were covering over the walls of the tabernacle. They were from animal, which is the highest. Which is higher than the level of tzomeach. This is higher than the level of plant that from it was the walls of the Mishkan. Okay. So if so, how is the order of the tabernacle? The tabernacle was shekol zeh, all of this. Nasek, if you say to Milos Madregos Ishtalshlos, this is like how the world is now. That the heavens are first, in other words, the higher level of life form is on the top. Everything goes from above to below. This is how it says that the heavens are first. But in the holy temple, Haya Nimsa was found, the Tachlis Hashlemos says the temple, that's what we're aiming for. Not the tabernacle. The tabernacle was wonderful, and it was a godly place, and it showed how important the physical world is to God. It was a place in the world, but God needs a house to live in. So the answer is yes, God needs a house to live in. If you realize that how important the world is to God, then you want to take the world and use it to serve God. The only place in the world that was 100% used to serve the creator of the world was the Holy Temple. All the rest is people are selfish. They do things on their own. They think about themselves. They have their own plans. They think they're the king of the universe. But in the tabernacle was a place where you could see, you could feel that there's a creator, the king of the universe. So the tabernacle, that was in a way the ultimate completion of the world. Right? Says wrong. It's not so. The tabernacle, even though it was a house for God, yes, but this is a house for God, how God creates the world, not the purpose of the world. We'll see. Although Mikdash in the Holy Temple, there was found the ultimate purpose for the creation of the world, not just the order of creation itself. Because it was permanent. Shel Kodesh Baruch Hu, of God. Like it says, Zot Menuchotei Adei. This is my resting place forever. It was like the world to come. What's the world to come? The world to come is not after you die. The world to come is the raising of the dead. Exactly the opposite of after you die. After a person dies, his soul is eternal, so his soul goes to heaven. Spiritualized, vaporized. Your soul is removed from all the falseness and the lies of this physical, mundane, perfidious world. But that's when, after a person dies. But then there's going to be a thing called the raising of the dead. The raising of the dead is that all the souls are going to come back to the world because the world is higher than heaven. That's the Holy Temple. That's something like this future level. What's going to be what they call in the 7,000th year. Then it says that there'll be total rest in the world, that even the dead will raise up. Then everything will raise up to what's called the upper earth, to be above everything. Then the lowest level will be above everything. Malchut of Atzilus is another word, a Kabbalistic term for God's mouth, God's speaking power. And now it's the lowest. It's how God comes down. But in the future, we'll see that this is the highest. Like it says, Eshet Chayla Teret Bala. Like it says, the woman of valor, that's this physical world, is the woman of valor, Mother Earth. Ateret Bala will be a crown on God, on the spiritual. Shetia Atera Latid Lavo, that the physical world will be a crown, Latid Lavo, in the future, Lazer Anpin Datzilut, that all the spiritual aspects of the world of Atzilut. So the world, the lowest aspect of the world of Atzilut, Atzilut is the highest of worlds. That's like God himself, so to speak, Atzilut. Another name for God, you want to call it. So the aspect of God that creates the world, that's Malchut. The aspect of God that has all these emotions, why he's creating the world, that's God's emotions. He loves the world, fear, etc. Now God's emotions, that's the spiritual part. That's what creates the spiritual. God's mouth, that's what creates the physical. It says in the future, the physical will be higher than the spiritual, because of its source. Because the physical earth, me and you right here, right now, in this physical world, that's what rose up in God's thought first. The earth is before the heavens. So we can see also in this how important every human being is, because we're being created by God, but also how every second is, how important now is. Now is being created by God right now, and that's the essence of God's thought. Before the world was created, what was God thinking? Why did he create the world? For now, for right now. And therefore, also in the Holy Temple, that the Holy Temple was something like the raising of the dead, where the physical becomes higher than the spiritual. The main thing of this Holy Temple was stones, the offer, and dirt. That they are physical, that even the roof, and like the, what is it, around the top of the Holy Temple. Excuse me, that they surrounded the whole temple. That was like they didn't even use them. It was just like the roof. But everything was made from stones, the offer and dirt. And it wasn't made from cedar wood. Because the temple is like it's going to be like in the raising of the dead. That the level of the earth will be higher than all of the heavens. Like we say, Eshet Chayal Ateret Bala, the woman of valor. In this case, the woman of valor is the physical world, will be the crown of her husband. So to speak, the creation will be higher than the creator. How is this possible? We don't know, but we'll see. Mitzad Shorsha, because of its thought. In other words, it rose up, this physical world rose up in the essence of God's thought. Raksha Colossus, there were just certain beams of wood which were in the ceiling. They were the Tomchim. They were like support, they gave support alone. But the main building, and even the main ceiling, was from the physical. Kenyan Tomchim Doraita, like it says, something like it says that there are people that support the Torah. People that support the Torah, of course, that's not the main thing. The people that learn the Torah, the main thing. But the supporters are very, very, how do you say, helpful. And so it is in the future. The physical world will be the main thing. But the helpers, the wood, which that represents the spiritual, that'll be like very helpful. It'll be maybe just so we'll remember how we once thought that going to heaven is the main thing of the reason we're here. We'll realize the foolishness of that type of thinking, because we'll see how precious this world is. That's why God gave the Torah in this world. That's why the Holy Temple is in this world. That's why the Jewish people are in this world. That's the whole goal of the Jewish people. And that's why Moshiach will build the temple first, and the temple will draw all the Jews back to Israel to show how important this physical world is. As we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. And that's also hinted at in why Yehuda comes close to Yosef, because nowadays Yosef is higher. That's like the tabernacle. But in the future, Yehuda is going to be the king. We're going to talk about this, God willing, later on. Let's do the okay. Parshas Yigash. One minute.